Hey guys, and welcome to Associate Tribe. Today we're going to be talking about callback interviews. So the interviews that take place after the on-campus or OCI interviews. And these are going to take place in the actual firm's offices. They're going to be a half day of interviews, so anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. And depending on how many attorneys are going to be sitting in on each of those 30-minute slot interviews, you could be meeting anywhere from 6 to 12 different attorneys, which also includes a 1.5 hour lunch portion of the interview. So you're going to be meeting a lot of faces. There's going to be a lot of conversations to maintain and honestly a lot of repetition. So let's get started on the 5 most important things to keep in mind as you go through these callback interviews so that you can rock them and get those summer associate offers. Number 1, take every callback interview. And I know we talked about this on the OCI interview video as well, but I feel really strongly about it. I know it's going to be stressful and time consuming, and you're going to miss a ton of class at the beginning of the semester, but it's completely worth it. You absolutely can bounce back. You can get somebody else's notes and make those callback interviews at the same time. And honestly, the reason I say to do this is because it's going to give you the best, most informed decision information that you can possibly have about your next summer. And there's no other way to do it. There's no other way to get to know these firms, to get to know their cultures, to get to know the people that you might be working with, except to go to these callback interviews. And it just happens so often where students are absolutely convinced of the firm they want to work for, and that they'll go to these callback interviews and they get a weird vibe from the people or from the office, or there's something about it that's off and they really don't wind up wanting to work there. And I think also on the flip side, it happens where people completely write off firms because of things they've heard either from other law students or professors, and they wind up not going even though it could have wound up being a perfect fit for them professionally. And I have a completely on point story about this very thing. So when I was in law school, I got a call for a callback from a firm that was a mid-sized litigation boutique, and all I had ever heard about this firm was negative things. They were a sweatshop, they were a boys club, they were a terrible place to work. People had awful experiences there. And so naturally when I got this callback call, I was about to say no thank you. And before I could do that, the recruiter on the other end said, hey, just so you know, this will be a short callback. You don't have to meet with very many attorneys. And also we offer second half clerkships, so you have the chance to split your summer between 2 firms. And that was a really big deal back then because there weren't very many firms doing that. And so I thought to myself, yeah, sure, why not? I'll give it a shot. I have the time. Let's give it a go. And I distinctly remember meeting with these attorneys and just being so impressed with them and also enamored with the culture of having sort of a laid back, roll up your sleeves, but also very professional vibe. And I wound up accepting the summer clerkship and actually wound up accepting the permanent offer there and wound up working there for 5 years. And so it was crazy how close I was to turning down that callback, which wound up being, 6 years of my life. And so because of that experience, I really, really encourage people to take all the callbacks that you can get, because you just never know which firm is going to be that perfect fit for you professionally. Number 2, brush up on current events. And just as in the OCI interviews, you're going to be checking out the firm's offices, their practice groups, and creeping on the interviewers that are going to be interviewing you. But in addition to those things, you're also going to need to catch up on current events, at least in the last week. So whether that's looking at headlines from CNN or the Wall Street Journal, or reading the Skim if you're a skimmer, any way you do it, just make sure you know generally the headlines that have been happening in the past week, and especially the headlines that happened the morning of your interview. Because what tends to happen is that you rush out the door, you're trying to get to the interview, you don't check a news app or a news report, and something big might have happened, like school shootings, huge natural disasters, corporate takedowns, things that are huge, getting huge headlines, because these absolutely can come up in an interview. For attorneys, it's just another day at the office, so they will check the news and they might talk about it as a conversation topic. And you don't want to look uninformed. You want to look like you know generally what's happening in the world outside of law school. So make sure you're checking those out so you don't find yourself in the same position that I was in on one of my callback interviews when the 2 associates I was interviewing with started talking about Ted Kennedy. I just assumed that they meant and they were referring to a letter that Ted Kennedy had written to Congress that had gotten a lot of press lately. And so I jumped in, I started talking about the letter, really impressed with myself that I knew what they were talking about. And they both stopped and they turned to me and they said, Ted Kennedy died this morning. Did you not hear? And I was just so embarrassed because no, I hadn't heard. I hadn't read the news the morning before I got into the interview. And so I like to think that it did make a big impact, but who knows? It could have been a deciding factor. And so just make sure you're reading those headlines, particularly on the morning of your interview before you go in. Number 3, the lunch counts. Now, most callback interviews are going to include an hour-and-a-half lunch where 2 associates take you out. And the most common thing that happens is that law students get lulled into this sense of camaraderie, security, friendship, and you have to remember that this lunch is part of the interview process as well. Now, they are trying to see if you are a normal human being, if you can carry on a normal adult conversation instead of just being sort of incredibly formal and reciting your resume and things like that, like you may be doing in the office. But the other part of the equation for the associates, at least, is to see if there are any crazy or negative characteristics about yourself that are being hidden by the formality of the interviews in the office. So they're going to be on the lookout for things like excessive profanity or being rude to the waitstaff or oversharing on incredibly inappropriate personal information or having a sense of entitlement or overconfidence about the interview. Things that you might feel like you can share with a friend or a coworker, but the associates are neither of these to you right now. It's still a professional interview and you have to treat it that way. You're not there to make friends. You're not there to treat yourself to a nice meal. You're there to get a job. So make sure you keep your game face on when you're at these lunches. And in that same vein, I would say there are a few do nots. Do not order alcohol at lunch. I don't care what the associates are ordering. Do not order the most expensive thing on the menu. Again, don't care what the associates are ordering. And don't ask taboo questions about pay or bonuses or partnership politics, things that you shouldn't ask in a formal interview and things that you should definitely wait until after you get an offer to ask if needed. Don't bring that stuff up at lunch either. And of course, do not let your guard down. This is a professional interview and you have to keep playing the game until the end of the day. Number 4, prepare answers to the following questions. Now, this is a bit of a cliffhanger because I realized as I was recording this video that it was getting a bit long. So I'm actually going to create a separate follow-up video to talk about this tip number 4, and it's going to be the 3 most common questions asked in a callback interview and how to go about answering them. So stay tuned. Number 5, be nice to everyone. And this is so key because law firm offices are small worlds where everybody talks and everybody knows that you're coming in for an interview that day. And so it's going to be a very fishbowl type experience, even if you don't realize it at the time. And there's no better way to get to know someone's true personality than to see how they act when they think that no one is looking. So when you walk through those doors of that building, make sure you are pleasant and polite to everyone. And I mean everyone you come into contact with, including the garage attendants, the receptionists, the administrative assistants, the cleaning staff, the maintenance staff, the IT team, human resources, random attorneys you meet in the hallways and in the bathroom. Be nice to everyone because word gets around so fast and they're going to use these stories and these impressions in their formal evaluations of you. And I'm also going to tack on to this one writing thank you notes because that is actually a big part of the law firm culture that people might not realize. And thank you notes are actually sort of hilariously a controversial topic. I think people have a lot of different opinions on them, but I'll share with you what made the best impression on me, what I would recommend doing, and that's writing a thank you email at the end of the day. So in the evening that you had that callback interview to every attorney that you met, including the recruiting coordinator. And it should be a very short, simple, to the point email telling them that you really appreciated meeting them, reiterating your interest in the firm, hoping that you'll hear back from them soon, and recalling something specific that you guys talked about if you can. So a practice group, a story, an interest, maybe a professor you shared, something that makes that email very specific to that person because associates love to share thank you emails between each other so that they can see if the interviewee just copy and pasted the same thank you note or actually took the time to write own personal thank you notes. That's it. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, go ahead and drop a comment and let me know which tip worked especially well for you, or if you have any of your own tips that we didn't cover in the video, go ahead and drop those in the comments section as well so that other people can benefit from them. And if you have any additional questions about callback interviews, about interviewing in general, let me know. We can make additional videos on this same topic. And if you're interested in learning more about law school, about the law firm world, about being a lawyer in general, go ahead and click subscribe so that you will be notified every time we release a new video each week. And best of luck in your interviews until then, and I will see you guys in the next video.